If you ask a person to describe their own habits on a survey, they will lie, or misremember, or subconsciously alter their answers. This creates a massive blind spot for researchers. Building business decisions on self-reported survey data means you are optimizing for behavioral fiction, not reality. To bypass this cognitive gap, we have to stop asking questions entirely. We use observation. We prioritize what subjects actually do in the field over what they claim to do on paper. Researchers treat observation as an engineered methodology, applying a rigorous framework to the act of watching. If a self-reported survey is the map, observation is the territory. Capturing the truth requires designing an environment that extracts reality without contaminating it. Every observational study is governed by 4 dimensions: control, natural environment versus artificial setting; group membership, detached outsider versus active participant; structure, exploratory field modes versus predetermined quantitative data; concealment, are subjects aware, or is the researcher hidden? Adjusting any single one of these sliders alters the type of data you generate. It also shifts the ethical burden placed on the researcher. Every observational study is a specific configuration of these 4 sliders. Adjusting them allows the researcher to calibrate the methodology to a specific business problem. Let's isolate the concealment slider. The moment a subject knows they are being watched, their behavior changes. This introduces the primary threat to any observational study: reactivity. The act of measuring a system alters the system. The most famous historical case is the Hawthorne effect. Researchers found that output spiked simply because workers were being observed, regardless of any actual changes to their environment. Looking at the rigid structure of this historical assembly line, it is obvious how a researcher standing with a clipboard would disrupt the factory's natural flow. The alternative is concealed observation. Hiding the researcher eliminates reactivity entirely, preserving the authenticity of the behavior. This creates a methodological paradox. Unconcealed observation taints behavioral authenticity, but completely concealed observation risks violating the ethics of informed consent and subject privacy. This leads directly to the group membership slider. How close must a researcher get to their subjects to truly understand their actions? At one extreme is passive participation. The researcher shares the physical space but remains entirely outside the social dynamic. Imagine shadowing a Wall Street broker on a crowded trading floor. You are physically present in this high-stress setting, but strictly a bystander. Push the slider to the opposite extreme, and you reach complete participation. The researcher actually becomes a functioning member of the social group under study. In 1967, Hugh Bainan joined the Ford Hallowwood plant. By working directly on the assembly line, he captured the factory experience from a genuine insider's point of view. The pioneer of this ethnographic method, Bronislaw Malinowski, argued that deep immersion is the only way to grasp the native's point of view, his relation to life, to realize his vision of his world. Operating at this level requires establishing rapport. The researcher must build deep trust to gain access to sensitive information. Cautionary, but building that trust comes with traps. Researchers are warned against relying on deviants or professional stranger handlers, marginal group members eager to interact, but who provide a deeply flawed view of the actual culture. The ultimate risk of complete participation is going native. The researcher becomes so immersed that they lose their objective detachment entirely. High participation buys you deep, rich, qualitative context, but it constantly threatens to destroy the objective lens required to analyze the very system you've joined. Now we shift to the structure slider. How do we take the qualitative chaos of human behavior and translate it into rigorous, testable, quantitative data? Consider a study by Thomas Perks, operating as a masterclass in highly structured, non-participant observation. He set up a waiting room environment featuring 2 bowls of candy, one with nutritional labels, one without. Perks maintained a low profile, controlling the geometry of the room while keeping his observations concealed. In a setup like this, the researcher cannot just watch passively. They require a strict coding scheme. They must predetermine exactly what fragments of behavior matter before the observation even begins. A valid coding category follows 2 unbreakable rules. It must be mutually exclusive, meaning no overlapping actions, And it must be collectively exhaustive, covering all possible relevant events so there are no gaps in the data. Structured observation works by stripping away narrative context. It reduces fluid human actions into isolated binary variables perfectly calibrated for hypothesis testing. Once a coding scheme is set, researchers choose a mathematical framework. The simple checklist measures raw frequency. The sequence record tracks exact chronological order. Finally, the sequence record on a timescale tracks specific durations and intervals. Returning to the dashboard, we see how a quantitative study like Perk's candy experiment locks into place: high control, non-participant, high structure, and concealed. Scientific observation is never a passive exercise. By manipulating control, participation, structure, and concealment, researchers bypass what people say and scientifically prove what they actually do.